Democrats got some big wins yesterday in several off-year elections in the U.S.
Yeah, in an Ohio ballot measure, a majority voted for abortion rights to be enshrined in the state constitution. In Kentucky, Democratic Governor Andy Beshear was reelected. And Virginia State House will be fully in Democratic control, preventing state Republicans from pursuing new abortion restrictions. And it'll be a small group on the debate stage today when 5 Republican candidates face off in Miami tonight. And former U.S. President Donald Trump, who's leading the polls, will not be among them. The debate is sponsored by the Republican Jewish Coalition, adding a level of interest in how the candidates position themselves on questions about the Israel-Hamas war.
And for more on what's happening south of the border, we're now joined live by presidential historian Alan Lichtman. He's a professor at American University, and he joins us live from Washington, D.C. Alan, it's always good to sit down with you, and we have a lot to talk about, so let's get right to it. Democrats, they're celebrating today after a number of key victories from last night's state elections, including in deep red Kentucky. Your thoughts?
You know, I have been saying for decades, forget the polls, forget the pundits, keep your eye on the big picture, which includes, of course, actual election results. You know, the pollsters and the pundits have been telling us, you know, these bad polls for Democrats should panic every Democrat. Biden's brand is so toxic, it's going to bring down Democrats all over the country. And in fact, the opposite happened in Kentucky and in Virginia. Not only did the incumbent Governor Beshear win in deep red Kentucky, he won big. It wasn't a nail-biter election. He won by about 5 points. And then in Virginia, you had this rising Republican star, Governor Youngkin, who's sort of, you know, MAGA with a more friendly face and who promised a different winning approach. He was expecting to flip the Senate to Republicans and hold the House, and the opposite happened. The Democrats held the Senate and took over the House, so they now control both chambers of the legislature. His proposed 15-week ban on abortions is dead, and he's got to govern against the opposition, and his brand as a potential Republican star is now tumbling.
Well, speaking of abortion, voters in Ohio said yes to making abortion a constitutional right, becoming the first Republican state to make such a vote. So talk to us about the significance of that.
This is of enormous significance. You know, ever since the Dobbs decision overturned Roe versus Wade, abortion has really been the hot button issue in America, particularly for Democrats, driving their loyalists to the polls and discrediting Republicans. Not only did it win in Ohio, which had been trending heavily Republican, it won in a landslide by about 13 points. This is not the first red state. We saw it in Kansas, for example, to vote in favor of abortion rights. And already Republicans are scratching their heads and backtracking and figuring out, and so far they haven't, on how to blunt this very powerful issue, which is definitely going to be front and center in the presidential election of 2024 and elections for every other position in America. Democrats are going to push as hard as they possibly can on this issue, and Republicans are, you know, backpedaling as fast as they can.
Okay, Alan, let's go to Manhattan now. That is where Ivanka Trump, she takes the stand in her father's civil fraud trial. It's important to note she's not a defendant, but she is a key witness. What are you watching for?
Yeah, I'm watching for her role in the financial statements. And like her brother, she's tried to distance herself. You know, this is the Trump MO. This has been the Trump MO for 50 years, even before Ivanka was born. You know, blame everyone else for your actions. Take responsibility for nothing. Well, this is not a jury trial. This is a judge trial. A judge has already found liability. The big question is, what will be the penalties? And I don't think he's going to buy for one moment the notion that the Trumps were not deeply involved in these critical financial statements, which got them their very favorable loans and saved them over $150 million. And, you know, Ivanka apparently has repeatedly said, I don't recall. And that's not going to fly. That's just not credible on something as critically important as getting the loans that are the lifeblood of the Trump organization, that somehow they've all forgotten all of these critical decisions. He's also apparently made some admission that Trump's net worth was not 2.5 to $3 billion, but more like $2 billion, which is below the threshold they need to get their loans from Deutsche Bank. And why do they go to Deutsche Bank? Because no American loaners would dare do business with the Trumps.
Okay, so much to cover, and I know you'll be watching when Republican presidential candidates take the stage tonight as well. We'll have to leave it there, though. Historian Alan Lichtman, thank you so much for your perspective, as always.
Thanks, Alan.